Hey guys, it's Babon and I'm back with another video, and this one is a time lapse of me making the cover art for Cattails 2. I was pretty excited to get this commission because I get to draw a bunch of cats and do a thing for a video game, and there's a big old background to doing it too. I will put the link to their site down in the description as well if you're interested in the game. Also, this video was released early on my Patreon, which you can subscribe to for early videos, tutorials, and sketches and stuff. Okay, so let's get going. So to start off with, I'm going to start with some little thumbnails like this to try and figure out what I want to do. I did have a reference image that was kind of photoshopped together out of different pieces to kind of show the layering that we wanted and the placement of the cats and everything, so it was kind of close to what I ended up doing anyway. I just changed the poses around a little bit. But I had a nice clear concept there to work from, so I'm just trying to get the flow of what I want to do with this here, and I was trying to think maybe I should do it at a different angle a little bit, which is what I was trying out in that second one below, but I ended up with it being just a little bit more flat like this, so you can see further back into the landscape because we wanted specifically all these different layers, and I'm also going to be layering it so that things can be removed and moved around and made into other little assets. So the way it's going to be layered is we're going to have the one cat in the middle, the two cats separate either side. I'm going to have the blue jay up in the left corner. We're going to have this rolling hill in the front, all of the little leaves and flowers around the front of it. And then we're going to have the trees and the lake behind, and then all of the larger wood, the wildwood, at the back, with all the mountains and then the sky behind that. What I also end up doing later is taking those trees out at the right side and making it so that we've got a little bit more of a view behind them. Anyways, I'm just trying to pad out my sketch a little bit more, give it a little bit more detail so I know where everything wants to go, all the different things I need to include. There are a few different little plants at the front. I think one was valerian, there's marigolds, and some different leaves. There's some thistles in there too. And then once that's done, I'm going to bring in the logo so that I can see how that's going to sit on there, because we need to leave a little bit of room for it. And then have a go at some cat poses. The first thing I wanted to try and work with was the angle of the main cat protagonist so that I could get a nice head angle. So I'm just kind of playing around with different things here, making some kind of weird yowly faces just for fun, kind of mess about with the angle. And I decided on this one over here that's a little bit kind of looking upwards. I do end up experimenting with it later to kind of move it around and see what works, if there's kind of a different option that would look a bit better, but we ended up on this one. So I'm just moving that over and kind of working it in. What I also ended up doing later with this was pulling the cat separately into another file so that I could extend it, so we had the rest of the legs in there as well, so that it's one whole asset, because it gets a little bit cut off in this. Next, I'm thinking about some, I guess, kind of daft poses. One of these little kittens on the right, Salem wants to be going after a butterfly, and Bubby on the left wants to be having a look at the little blue jay in the tree. So I'm kind of messing about with those right now and seeing what I can come up with the poses. The perspective isn't too crazy in this, so it's not too difficult for me to just mess around with those poses separately and then drag them in and kind of move them around, since they need to be, like I said, their own assets anyway, so we can remove each layer of this and have them separate and movable. And thankfully that's a thing I've got used to, since I've been doing kind of a lot of screens and slightly animated things for people on Twitch, so kind of layering stuff like this and doing the extra work behind everything isn't really too much of a fuss to me anymore. I'm kind of getting used to that. And next, what I'm going to do is make this the whole screen, because I like the way that it's laid out. I've got approval for it, and I'm going to continue and make a nice tidier sketch so I can figure out where I want to put my lines on top of that. Everything's still a little bit rough underneath, but I can see where it all wants to be. None of the things in here are going to be moving around too much from this point on. It's just a case of tidying it up. I do end up kind of stylized in the way I do some of these shapes later as I was painting it. I decided it looked kind of nice to have more of a blocky brush on it, so some of it leans a little bit more into that later. I also kept the lines quite skinny when I lined it, because I wanted to kind of focus more on the blockiness of the paint rather than anything too heavy with the lines. What I'm going to be trying to do as well is, as I go along with these layers, kind of block them in underneath so that you can see them as solid grey chunks. Now that's not necessarily going to line up with the values that I'm going to use in the end. It's just kind of to give a little bit of layer into them so that we can separate things without seeing the rest of the sketch behind everything else. There are a few things I haven't put in yet as well, because we're going to be including the little cattail plants just off to the left around the side of the pond as well, but that's something I'm going to be drawing in a little bit later. Instead of lining those, since they're going to be quite small, I'm going to put them in as solid chunks and then colorize them. So we're going to do a little bit differently with those than we're going to do everything else. I'm also kind of hopping around with little details that I've got in the front where I'm drawing in the leaves, and this front little banner, I'm also going to be splitting that up actually into its own layer once it's done, so that I have all of those as removable around the front as well. Next, I'm going to get into just blocking all my layers down like this and put a little bit of a shimmy in for the clouds up the top, and then I'm blocking in a little bit of a perspective grid like this. So I've got something a bit better to work from when I'm putting the cats in, so that they make sense in that perspective. The main reason as well, or another reason that I wanted to keep this perspective, so I want to say shallow, it's not very extreme in any direction, is so that when we have these kind of removable assets of the cats as they are, they're a little bit easier to use kind of outside of the context of this whole image, so they're very like straight on. There's not any weird angles, you've just kind of got them stood there in regular poses that we can use. Kind of reminds me of being a kid and looking through like the little booklets that you'd get with a video game, and they'd have like all the separate images of the different characters and about them and stuff, but it would be like pulled out of a bigger image. Also, as I'm going along with this, I did have refs off to the side, just in a different file so that I could see everything. I have references of poses that were similar. Most of them kind of weren't. I think the Blue Jay one was the closest to kind of pull in from any references. The other ones, I was kind of struggling to find poses that I wanted for those, so I ended up making my own after doing a bunch of little sketches of kittens and cats. All of the cats are slowly getting cleaned up here as well, and like I say, I'm making sure to get the rest of them in behind there and keep them all on their separate layers. This got absolutely crazy with the amount of layers that I ended up with. Since it was more painty, I did end up being able to merge a lot of stuff down a little bit later on. I tend to have a habit of making more layers over the top so I can just keep extra bits of paint in separate, so that I know that I'm going in the right direction and not kind of veering off what I've got underneath, and that it's actually kind of improving rather than kind of skewing anything that I already had underneath. I actually kind of like it when my sketches get to this stage, when I start to block things out, because it's not always obvious when I'm done with the shading quite as much, but I like seeing the kind of wireframe where I will set things out. Like I've got kind of a midline down the front of the cat, and I've got the planes of the face kind of blocked in, but once I actually go and shade it in, it's quite a lot softer because the fur's quite round. Anyways, we're done with all those. I got the go-ahead on everything, and now we're on to the liner. So I'm going in and doing the trees there, which I think took a while. They kind of all start to look like they blend in a little bit, which I do something to fix later, but not on the line layer. With this commission as well, I think this is the first one I've done for a game, or it's the first kind of splash screen I've done for a game. I've done ones for people's kind of like ROM hack projects and stuff, or RPG Maker games before, and also some little bits of like concept art, character design things for app games, but nothing kind of on this scale. This is the first thing, so this one was interesting and a little bit like scary to be honest, but I did it. I think overall the time scale for this as well is around 40 to 50 hours, I'd say, is how long this took for me to do. I don't have the exact time because I saved this just as time lapses instead of actually recording the time that I was spending on it through like videos as I would with my streams, since it was done off stream. But it was about that much work. Now, initially it was going to be a little bit more towards kind of a cel-shaded style, because the things I was shown to kind of go for that they liked from my portfolio was some of the Stardew Valley commissions that I've done for people, and obviously since this game kind of leans into the same Stardew kind of themes and mechanics, then we wanted to go with something like that. But once I got into it, I was like, you know what, this would look very nice if I started painting on it. So I got into some of the brushes and I was like, what can we do here? The majority of this as well is painted with just the basic round watercolor brush. I think it's either dense watercolor or opaque watercolor are the two brushes that I used mostly on this, especially for a lot of the blending of colors. And there was also kind of a square pastel brush that I have that's a little bit chunkier and was kind of helping with some of the shapes like that. And also for some of the littler details, I used the pen tool on more of a soft anti-aliased setting, as well as what's it called? The India ink brush in Clip Studio is one of my faves for just little details like the whiskers and stuff. The clouds are mostly that watercolory brush that I'm pulling around, and some of the mist in the back is more towards the airbrush, but there's pretty much only like 3-4 brushes that I used in the whole thing, and they're overwhelmingly basic ones for the most part. I didn't want to put too much texture in it. I kind of wanted to focus on either the nice gradients or these little kind of peaks of color. Like you can see where I've slapped into some of the colors on the trees, where some bits go a little bit more heavy green, some lean a little bit more into like yellowish. And then once I had all that, kind of blocking it out into these more interesting chunky shapes. But as you can see right now, I'm just trying to get the main blocks down, get the kind of shading blocks, get a little bit of variation in the colors, and then I kind of have myself a color palette that I can work with. Once I had that down, I started to kind of play around with some of those different color options that I could do. I think I did a few tweaks over the top, some kind of gradients to see if it would look better, because we wanted to lean more into having it quite shadowy and spooky down the front where we've got the trees, and we're going to have all the little red glowing eyes. And then a little bit brighter kind of towards the back where we've got the sky and all of that in the distance. And obviously a little bit brighter at the front. I didn't want to shadow the front out too much. I just wanted to make sure that we had that kind of contrast between them at the front, kind of further to the left, and then over on the right where we have the trees. Also because we want the logo over the top, so it needs to have a little bit more contrast between what's underneath it and what's going to be on top with the logo, where it's a bit brighter. You can start to see now on the cat as well. Basically what I'm doing is just eyedropping the colours I've already got down. I've tried to pay a lot of attention to where I've got the bounce light coming up from this green underneath, and also the blue from the top that's going to be bouncing onto the side of the cat. So I've put down all those different things that I do in a cell shading thing anyway, but just like that, and then kind of pulling the shapes around. I've kind of gone the same way with a lot of this down the front as well. I've done a little bit of painting. I've put my shadows down and then painted the lights on in all these different colors, and now that they're on there, I'm just grabbing them and pulling them about. I do think this subsurface scattering, which is that very saturated underneath side of those leaves where the light's coming through it, that was a color that I went and picked separately to pull into it, just because there wasn't anything quite that saturated in it kind of hanging around there, because it's not going to react the same on top of the leaves. It's going to be a little bit more pale. That was a color that I grabbed and pulled through just independently of the ones that I'd put down already. We're going to pull that around there. We have the little mouse down in the corner who's going to get a little bit of that bounce light from that too, because that green is going to come through the leaf and bounce onto the top of him once I get to shading him. At this point as well, I've got all my layers set out, and I'm kind of switching between them quite a lot, so I apologize for it being a little bit flickery on and off. I find it a little bit easier to work like that when there's something big like this, rather than doing one whole piece. It helps it to kind of progress at the same speed as a whole, rather than just finishing one section and then move on to another. Some other stuff I'm going to do after as well is bring in a few more little flowers on the front, just kind of in an overpaint thing. Oh, anyways, it looks like we're having a look at the background now as well, painting that in. All of that behind the trees that you just saw kind of over to the right is where I'm kind of plotting to put another little pond in that you'll see in a minute, and that's something that you're not going to see if the art's just posted as it is, but as they start to kind of move it around, pull it apart, use it for different things, that's an option that they have. They have that whole background as an additional asset. Something else I was very intentionally doing with this as well was making sure that I got most of the background almost all the way done before I got to doing any of the very finished stuff on the cats at all at the front, and especially that blue jay. That blue jay is like the last thing that gets done in this, because compared to the size of everything else on the canvas, they are very small, and I didn't want to go straight for them since they're the main focus as well, and the detail is so condensed on them. I thought it's better to leave them for later and not get too enthralled with it, because anyone who does like big scenes like this and does characters knows that it's a lot easier to do the characters. It's a lot easier to spend all the time on them and get them done, and then once you get to the background you're like, oh no, there's like 10 times more work left to do, and it's all the background. So I guess I have not that I don't enjoy the backgrounds, I do really enjoy the backgrounds, it's just a little bit easier to do it this way. It's kind of a save the best for last mentality. The same way I eat my food. Save the roast potatoes for last. I'm doing a similar thing with the clouds as well, in terms of kind of completing it as a layer on its own. So I'm trying to make sure that you only see so much of it, so it works with the composition as it is when you bring all these other layers in, but also so that it pulls down completely behind that, and it's its own thing. I tried on purpose to keep this nice clear blue area in the middle, so that when we have the cat kind of centered in that, it doesn't compete with any of that brightness from the clouds, since the cat is so pale. And then I bring in an extra bit of glow behind the cat as well. I actually forgot I left a little note in this too, explaining what I'm doing. There it is. The cats need to look good out of context to the rest of the scene, so I'm bringing a backdrop in to compare. So with certain colours like this, when you have that colour relativity, something will look a certain colour when it's in the rest of an image, where the colours all make sense, and how they relate to each other. But when you take it out of it and put it on a different background, it will look completely different. So you can kind of see that the white in this is a little bit yellow tinted, but it's not so much that it looks strange out of context on just that grey background. So I wanted to make sure that it was going to work on top of anything else, especially because in some of the earlier colour edits it was leaning a little bit too much into like kind of yellow or green, because I've got that kind of green base in a lot of the greys underneath because of how it's bouncing up from the rest of the image. Or the little hill that they're stood on, I should say, it's kind of bouncing up from the grass where the light's hitting it. Those shadows underneath them are gonna be cleaned up a little bit later too. They are just put down as kind of a placeholder, but they are separate underneath so that they are removable or reducible. The little details we're doing now look to be in all of these tiny little leaves around here. I put some really tiny little water drops on them because I think painting those are really fun, and it just gives like a little bit of shiny in them where otherwise they look a little bit just, I guess, kind of textured and not super shiny. It gives something a little bit more pop. I like drawing the flowers as well. Marigolds are actually very fun to draw. Luckily I had some references of those as well because we have some of those in the garden, so it was quite easy to go and get those and have them as a reference for it. There's the extra blue behind the head of the cat. I wanted to kind of bring that forward more and concentrate that saturation so that we had a little bit more of a focus point there. A lot of the things in the front are very saturated, but when you kind of look at the sky and you also have that brightness from the eyes, I thought we'll bring that out around the cat and have it radiate. That will also make it a little bit darker as well, so that it's not, like I said, blending in with those whites in the cat. It kind of looks like I've already done it as well, but in the background where I've got the lake, I've done a little bit of a Bob Ross where you kind of slap the colours down that are above it, and then you just kind of pull them down into like a gradienty wash so that it kind of spills downwards, and then you put the little shine on the top. So thanks Bob Ross. My boy Bob taught me how to do the water. What else do we have in a nibble at? We've also got the mouse down there now with all that little bounce light that I mentioned. He's got the green on top of him. I think I might have an overpaint layer on the go as well, where I just have some of those more little details. I have changed a bit of the colour of the line art too. I was a little bit iffy about doing that at first, but I thought, no, the more I paint, the more it kind of needs that change in the colour. I've done it a little bit on the main cat as well, but you can see it mainly on the little marigold down in the right corner, where it's leaning a little bit more orangey around those edges rather than just the solid black that I had the line art before. I think I faded out a little bit in the top of the trees as well, especially as they go further backwards. And it's going to be applied a little bit more on the other cats as well. Oh no, there I go with the Bob Ross. There I go with the Bob Ross. Yeah, you pull the colours down and then you put the shine on the top around the edges. Very nice. A little bit of glow on the top, a little bit of mist, kind of pulling that backwards. Softer towards the back, a little bit brighter towards the front. I tried to bring that kind of blocky texture into the way I was doing the trees as well. When I was doing that sketch initially, you might have noticed I did quite a lot of little details just for those trees in the back. But by the time I got to actually painting it, I was like, yeah, this is gonna look really bad if I have the line art this dense, where it's a little bit more loose and skinny kind of further forward. It's a little bit more busy in the trunk of that tree on the right, but it really didn't need that much in the back. So I kind of kept that just to the outlines of everything, kind of the crests of the hill and the trees, and then went in with that textured brush. So everything kind of looks like just little rectangles if you zoom in as it goes further back, just to create that kind of uneven edge of where the trees are going to be lit up. I quite like how it turned out on that tree in the front as well. And I've also fixed what I mentioned where it looked like the trees were kind of blending into each other, because I went and tweaked some of them a little bit more bluish, which I think helped a lot actually, because I have that very heavy red underneath them to try and lean it a bit darker. I was trying to lean into kind of the color duality of having that red in the shadows and then leaning a little bit more kind of yellowish in the lighting. So we've got kind of green red going on and then blues in the middle, so kind of a gradient through those colors. So you got dark reds, kind of mid blues, and then light yellows, and as it swings into those kind of greens that we've naturally got in there anyway. Here we go with a little bit more painting over here. We're doing a little bit more hills like that. It's kind of going more into a mountain over that way that's just a little bit greener. And this little dip for where we're going to put the other pond. A little bit of texture around there, a bit more scrubby so that it rolls down a bit more. So it's almost like a little bit of a crater. I thought would look fun, just to fill that space in around the same edge that we have the cut off for where the trees are. And then doing the same thing with the lake and bring the rest back on. Okay, now mostly everything in the background is done, so we're just getting into these little details. So I'm putting in more tiny little flowers, making it a little bit more textured around here. So it's a little bit more meadow-like and blends in with the rest of it rather than just looking like a flat little green plain. A little bit more kind of grass texture. I thought some kind of like mossy, tiny flowers like this. So yeah, the tiny little white flowers. Some of those spooky eyes in the woods, very spooky. A little bit of heather down this way was also something that I was asked to add in, so we've got a little bit of those pops of purple that kind of come through, kind of the same as the colours of the stones that I've put in there as well to like fill that out. So there's all the little flowers on there, just a little textury kind of flicks of the brush. A little bit more on this background. And mist in between these layers to get them to stand out a bit more as well. So we've got a little bit heavier layering on it to show that it goes further back and blends out into those different mountains further away and show how far back the wood goes. What else do we have? A little bit more nibbling around there. There's always more nibbling. I actually spent quite a long time doing all the little details there. It's kind of crazy to see that background and then bring in the rest of the stuff at the front and be like, oh, there's the rest of the image too. And yeah, going in and adding these with a little trick just to plonk the shape down and then bring the lines in later. And with most of this, I kind of worked dark to light, because it was a little bit easier to put the dark colours down first and lean into kind of that warmer, more red undertone, and then lean into the more kind of icy blues and kind of yellow, lean that way. Like I mentioned before as well, I am putting the little cattails in, kind of in a similar way where I'm just blocking it down, painting them in like that, and then bringing the colours in. Just so they're kind of subtle and like over painted, because they don't need all the lines on them. Then I'm going to go in with more little details on the cat. give him some fangs. And now that I am, you know, kind of satisfied with the background and that it's like pretty much done, I'm gonna go in and finish these 2 cats and then the blue jay. I think I've already mentioned, but like I was saying, I will start to bring in those kind of blockier shapes into the shading on Salem, because he's a little bit kind of smooth right now, or he's a little bit too choppy in his fur, so I'm trying to bring in some of those squarer shapes. Gradients on the butterfly, get a little bit of glow through that. He's got the shine and last little details on his eyes, and then kind of a lot of overpainting on Bubby. I think Bubby was the most difficult one to do just because he's got all these different colours on him, so I had to, I guess, instead of picking like 3 or 4 colours to shade, well, the majority of a cat, it was more like, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12 just for the body of him. But once I got all these other little bounce bits in, like that tiny little bit of green tint on his tummy and a little bit more leaning into the blue, I think it kind of tweaks a little bit purple, it looks like, on his back, where that's light enough. It started to read a bit better, so that he looks 3D. I think he's the one that improved the quickest in terms of once I started painting him. Once I started putting it down with the different colours and the bounce, he started to look a lot better. I also put this little bit of glow behind the other kittens as well, just so that it blurs out anything else that's behind them once they're actually in this scene, so that they kind of stand out on their own like that as well, since they are also kind of a focus. Not as much as the main cat, but still there. I've taken that from behind the blue cat, not the blue-eyed cat, the white cat at the front for a second too, so I can see where I'm painting the blue jay as well, so that he goes in. He's got quite a lot of the bright blues as well, so that that plays off of everything else. And there we go, we're done once the blue jay is finished. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. If it did, give us a like, share if you think it'll help someone else, subscribe for new videos on Saturdays. Like I say, I release everything early on the Patreon. I'll also be putting tutorials on there as well. There's links to everywhere I post stuff down in the description, as well as where you can get prints of things I've already drawn and my commission information. There'll also be a link to the Cattails website if you want to take a look at that. Yeah, thanks for watching. I will link to some other stuff that I've done as well in the videos. Yeah, goodbye!